Hey everybody, Matt Jackson here at Local Motors. Some of you are probably aware, one of the driving principles behind Local Motors from the beginning has always been the idea that we should be reducing our dependence on petroleum through increased fuel economy and by addressing or investigating potential future power technologies, ways to drive cars and things. One of the things I've been researching a lot recently is CNG, which stands for compressed natural gas, and it's basically just methane. And it has some distinct advantages over traditional gasoline. So CNG is actually the most has the most energy per mole, so per unit mass. In terms of fossil fuels, it's like the most bang for your buck for fossil fuels that there is. So when you look at CNG, though, it's something it's spreading around the world. There are many Eastern European countries that really use a lot of CNG vehicles, and you see it in the US and Canada with big fleet vehicles like buses, and there's some taxi fleets that are using this now. So it's something that I feel like is up and coming, and we really need to be aware of where it's going and what the drawbacks and what are some of the advantages of CNG. So as a comparison, let's say that this represents a gallon of gasoline, 1 gallon. Right now, if you go to a CNG fueling station, and there are about 5 in the Phoenix area, CNG is sold in gasoline gallon equivalent, GGE, which is a standard for alternative fuels so that everybody kind of knows what they're getting. So if you look at a GGE of CNG, because it's not actually liquid, it's in a gaseous form when it's stored most of the time in cars at 3,600 psi. So to get the equivalent amount of energy that you have in a gallon of gasoline, for a gasoline gallon equivalent of CNG, you've got something that's almost 4 times as big. So this would be 1 GGE of CNG. We're getting kind of acronym heavy here, but stay with me. So almost 4 times as large. So that means that this is the same amount of energy for the same volume for CNG that you would get with 1 gallon of gasoline. So if you were to go and retrofit your car, which is something you can do now, most modern cars, you can go and get an EPA approved conversion kit and go to an approved installer and get your car switched over to run on CNG. So with CNG, it's significantly cheaper. It's almost always $1 cheaper than an equivalent gallon of gasoline, but it takes up a lot more space. So when you go to get your car converted, you wind up usually sacrificing a large portion of your trunk to put in these tanks that have to be rated to hold like 5,000 psi, because most people are running it at 3,600 psi. So like, for example, if I was running it like 2,500 psi, this gasoline gallon equivalent would be significantly larger. So you want to run at a higher pressure. So one of the benefits of this is that even though it's very large for equivalent range, it burns much cleaner and it's much cheaper. So like I said, it's almost $1 less. But if you take a gallon of gasoline and you take the amount of CO2 that's generated by a car that's burning a gallon of gasoline, let's say it's this big. That's all, just point of reference. The equivalent amount of CO2 that's generated from a gasoline gallon equivalent of CNG is about this big. It's exactly 40% less CO2 generated per gasoline gallon equivalent of CNG. So what does this all mean? What can you do with your car? Well, you can convert your car, like I said, but if you drive a diesel car, you can actually get a significant horsepower boost. In a diesel vehicle, you can run up to 70% additive CNG over the original the diesel that you would already have. So you can tune it for how much of a horsepower boost you want to get, how much of the diesel cost that you want to offset. But the more that you run, the hotter your car gets, and the more CNG you're going to burn. But as your car gets hotter, you usually have to have a system installed that will shut down the CNG flow so that you don't overheat your car. But what people are starting to do is starting to make CNG-powered diesel dragsters and like drift cars and stuff. So you can take like a Dodge Ram or something with a Cummins diesel in it, and if you were to run something like 70% CNG flow, while that flow is going, you're going to get something like 350 extra horsepower. So it can be pretty impressive, it can be pretty exciting, but at the same time, the same technology, you can go and run in a gas car, you can do a complete conversion where you're running just CNG, or you can even do both where you can switch between them. and you can significantly offset your cost of fuel. When that, when you get that paid back to you is kind of depending on how much you drive, which is why fleets do it. But yeah, that's pretty much what I found at CNG. It's a pretty exciting subject, and it might be something we're getting into in the future, so stay tuned.